Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome back to another Sims 4 speedbuilding video, or welcome to the channel if you are new here. So in today's video I'm going to be building in the world of Henford-on-Bagley, which is the world that we got with the newest expansion pack. Even though it's not that new anymore, it's still the latest one that we got, which was the Sims 4 Cottage Living, and I'm going to be building a country cottage. So despite the Sims 4 Cottage Living expansion pack being out for literally months at this point, this is only my third time building in this world, which is really surprising to me, and I can't believe it's been out for like 3 months and this is literally the third time that I'm building here. But there is a reason behind it. It's because when Cottage Living first came out, I did a build 1 week and then the following week I built in the same world, which if you're familiar with my channel then you'll know this, but I like to switch up the worlds that I build in every single week, and I like to switch up the style of house. So 1 week I might build in San Marshino and I might build a penthouse. The next week I might build in Oasis Springs and I might build a Mediterranean house, so on and so forth. But with Cottage Living, it came out, I was completely obsessed with the pack, so I did 2 builds in the same world in like a row. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. And so I thought, do you know what, I'll give this world a little bit of a break and I'll come back to it. And it's just been like 3 months since I've built in this world, but I'm back and I'm building in my favourite world, and I really wanted to sit down and build a countryside cottage for my save file because this build will be in my save. Now, to be honest with you, there was actually a little bit of influence why I wanted to sit down and build a cottage in the countryside for my save file this week. And even though it's completely unrelated to The Sims, I know that a lot of people that play The Sims also play Animal Crossing. I may or may not have been a little bit too excited and a little bit too eager wanting to play Animal Crossing and the new update and the new DLC, and so I wanted to build something which I feel like you could do in Animal Crossing but then you can also do in The Sims. So I wanted to build a cottage in the woods, you know, a little bit secluded. I wanted there to be a pond so your Sims can go fishing. I wanted there to be some vegetable patches so your Sims can grow all their fruits and vegetables and pumpkins and whatnot. And then I also wanted there to be a little bit of a farm aspect, so I included some chicken coops into this house as well. But yeah, I thought I'd mention that one of the things that inspired me to do this build was, funnily enough, the Animal Crossing update and the new DLC. But something I quickly want to mention before I forget: if you look in the top right corner, you can see all of my icons are a little bit broken, a little bit messed up. Just try and ignore that. It doesn't come with the build. The broken icons are not included in this build. It was just me being, if I'm being honest, a little bit silly, because normally whenever we get a base game update or a patch update or whatever in the game, I'm normally quite good and I don't update my game straight away, just because a lot of mods then become broken and sometimes custom content breaks and whatnot. So normally I'm quite good and I wait until all the mods that I use and I play with are updated, because if I'm being honest, I can't play The Sims 4 or at this point really building The Sims 4 without my mods. But it was on Wednesday morning, I woke up, I literally just rolled out of bed, was making myself a cup of coffee, and I didn't even think, and I pressed update game and I updated my game, and I had a few mods that hadn't been updated that needed an update. So if you can see in my top right corner that they're a bit broken and you're thinking, you know, what's going on there, it's just because of a broken mod. The broken icons are not included with this build, it was just purely in my game, but they've since been updated. But just when I was actually doing this build, they wasn't updated. But I just wanted to address it just in case you noticed it and you're like, what is going on over there? That is what's going on. But anyway, moving on from that and talking about what I'm doing right now. So as you can see, the main structure of the build came together quite quickly. I feel like the house building itself is quite a simple concept. It's basically just a rectangle with a few bump outs here and there. But I've already done the wallpapering and the windows and the doors. All of the windows and the door are from the Cottage Living expansion pack. And I actually merged in 2 windows from the pack to create one singular window. So you might be thinking, hang on, you've actually got that window that you've tried to create in the build and buy anyway, but it's actually a different swatch. So, and I don't know why they did it, but for some reason we have the window that I've tried to create, we actually have that as one singular window in the build and buy menu. And then we also have a version of it where it's the window and then there's a shutter on the left hand side, and then another version of it where it's the window and the shutter on the right hand side. Hopefully you're following along with me. But for some reason, on the version of the window where it's both shutters on one window without having to merge 2 windows together, there is not this colour swatch that I've used. There is meant to be the same colour swatch, but it's not actually the same colour swatch. And so I really wanted to use this swatch of the wood on the shutters. And so to do that, I basically merged in 2 windows to look like it's one window, but it's actually 2 windows. I don't know why they couldn't keep all the swatches the exact same for all the different windows. It confuses me, but I wanted to use this one because the wooden swatch that I've used of the shutters looks a little bit more run down, a little bit more worn, you know. these shutters and these windows look like they've been around for a really long time. Maybe the house is donkey's years old, and I wanted to kind of reflect that on the windows. I didn't want to have these perfectly clean windows with no like mold on them and stuff like that. Whereas the ones that I've used, they just kind of look a little bit, they look like they've got water damage. It's the only way I can describe them. Hopefully that makes sense, but I wanted to mention that just in case you was like, why are you not using the one window that we actually have when you're trying to create the exact same thing that they have in the game? That is the reason for it. For some reason, there is a swatch of the single shutters that we don't have on the swatch of, you know, like the big shutters. I want to say hopefully it gets updated, but if I'm being honest with you, I don't think it's ever going to be updated, and I just feel like it's going to be something that's always going to be in the game. But I hope with future releases that there's no oversights like that, because it's just so annoying. I would have loved to not have had to sit there and just get them so they're perfectly accurate and perfectly in line with each other, so it looks like one window. I mean, to be honest, I could have just used the windows that we have in the game, but I just really like this swatch of the wood. I just think it looks so nice, and it's got a little bit of detail to it. And anyway, I'm going to stop talking about windows and talk about what I'm doing right now. So as you can see, I've started doing the landscaping for this build. I kept in all the landscaping for this build, which I love, because I feel like the landscaping with all the different flowers and trees and bushes, it really makes this house. You can see on the right hand side, I've actually placed down this pond, which I always say this, but whenever you want to place down a pond into your game, I would highly recommend that you do a bit of terrain paint to kind of give yourself a general idea of where the pond is going to be sunken in, and then I added in some water. It's just so much easier. But something that I love doing with ponds is they don't need to be perfect, they don't need to be accurate, because I imagine that this pond is not man-made, you know, it's a natural pond. The house is kind of built around it, and so I try to show that with the fencing that I've used, which is from the live edit menu. I found these fences and they've kind of got this curve to it, and annoyingly in The Sims 4 we can't really do curved fences unless you place down I think it's like a foundation or something, and then you put the fence onto it. But I wanted to create a fence that merged into the water, so I used a few different pieces from the live edit menu and kind of put them together like a puzzle, and then put them on top of the water, so it looks like all the landscaping is being kept in by this fence to stop it overgrowing into the pond. I do also landscape around the pond as well. Like I add general, you know, like gunk and stuff. I don't know what it's called, but you know, all the stuff that sits in the water, and some lily pads and some like things coming out of the water to make it look like overgrown. But I didn't want all of the like the pink flowers and the white flowers all merging into the pond, because to me that didn't look as realistic. And so yeah, I do landscape the pond area as well. But something that I want to mention with the pond, which I'm so happy, and I thought it was actually so clever, I created a little duck house in the middle. So you know when you go to your local park or something and they've got a big lake or a big pond, oftentimes you'll find that there's like a little duck house in the middle of it. I don't know if ducks actually sleep in them, but they're always in the, wherever I go and there's a pond, normally there's like a little duck house, and it's in the middle of the lake, and ducks can, like, you know, swim into it, and well, not swim into it, they swim up to it and they walk into it. But I basically created a little duck house in the pond at the back. I just think it's the most adorable thing, and I don't know why I've never done it before. But saying that, I don't often put ponds into my builds, but I just thought it was such a cute idea, and you'll see me do it in a minute. But anyway, moving on from that and actually talking about the family that's going to be living in this house, my save file, because as I've mentioned, this house is going to be for my save. Now, this is actually going to be for a family that are already existing in all of our games. They're pre-existing townies that came with The Sims 4 Cottage Living, and they are the Moody and McMillan family. So the household consists of two Sims. We have Derek McMillan and Ian Moody, and they're a married elder couple that live together in the world of Henford-on-Bagley. Now, when you go into a brand new save file, they don't live on this lot. They don't even live in this neighbourhood. They live on a different lot, which is a 40 by 30 in, I believe, the neighbourhood which is the Bramblewood, and where I'm building is the neighbourhood of Old New Henford. But I felt like they wasn't really going to be people that are going, or Sims that are going to be wanting to do some farming. I feel like they want a simple life. They want to have maybe a few chickens, maybe grow some fruits and vegetables, and that's basically it. They don't really fancy getting up at like 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning to go tend to a llama or a cow. So I feel like building them a house on a smaller lot was just a little bit more appropriate. So I kind of went with their household description and kind of built in it and gave them a little bit more of an in-depth storyline for my save file. So their household description is something along the lines of: Derek was in an office job for years and then finally found a man willing to live out his rustic dream of his youth, and then they moved into his family cottage and they've just never left. Now, the idea for the Sims is they're quite different from one another. We have Derek, who is very into cross-stitching and gardening and cooking and herbalism and writing, you know, very cottagey kind of personality is the way I can describe that. Whereas Ian's skills are more into like charisma and piano and singing and dancing. So you kind of got one Sim that is more into enjoying their alone time. You know, they like gardening in their garden, they like maybe doing a bit of cooking and maybe write a book or two. Whereas you've got another sim that's a little bit more social. I feel like out of the two, if they were ever to go up to, you know, like the Gnome's Arms, which is the pub that we've got in the world, I feel like Ian's going to be the one that's going to do all the talking, because he's into stuff like charisma and piano and dancing and whatnot. So I try to take all of this into consideration, you know, their separate skills that they both have, all their different hobbies, and also their lifetime aspirations. And I tried to build in it to make it a little bit more in-depth and just kind of like a little bit more of an interesting backstory. So like I mentioned, in their original household description, it mentions that Derek was previously in an office job. Now I imagine that Derek was previously in this office job that he absolutely hated and never wanted to do it, but it was just something that, you know, it gave him a little bit of money and so he could put food on the table for his previous family. Because I actually imagine that Derek was also in a previous marriage which he just really wasn't happy with. I imagine that before he met Ian, he was just really sad with his life. He wasn't living out his dreams. He wasn't doing exactly what he wanted to do. He was kind of always answering it to someone else. And since being married to Ian, he's just out here living his best life. He now wants to be an author and he's actually pursuing that. I created a little study office nook in this house as well, which if you wanted to, you could actually turn it into a bedroom. It's on the downstairs level. But I created this little office space, so, you know, of an evening, once he's done this gardening for a day and maybe he's made the both of them a gourmet meal for dinner, he can go into the office and sit down and write some books. I was more so imagining that he would be an author for children's books, where I was thinking he was in this office job for so many years and he was in this sad marriage that he wasn't in love with this other person with. He just kind of had all this built up creative energy that I feel like he probably bottled in for many years, and now since he's living his best life with Ian, you know, the love of his life, he can just let all this creativity out, and you know, it's all been bottled up and now he pours it all into children's books. And I just really like the idea. Now I mentioned that he had a previous family. I imagine that he had one child in his previous marriage who has actually since now grown up and has children of their own, which makes Derek and Ian both grandparents. And so in this house, it's got 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, and I made one of the bedrooms into a grandchildren room. I imagine that when it's, you know, the festive season, maybe in the summer holidays, their grandchildren come to stay and spend time with them. I imagine them being really fun grandparents, and their grandchildren just love coming and just spending time with them because they're just really nice Sims to be around. They're the kind of Sims that you just want to sit down and have a cup of tea with. They're just so sweet and I just love them both. But now moving on and talking about Ian and Ian's backstory. So Ian, like I mentioned, is really into piano, singing, dancing, charisma, comedy. He's just a very creative Sim in that sense. He's very musically inclined as well. And so I think for my save file, I'm going to make it so he's going to be an entertainer. I'm not sure if I'm going to make it so he's an entertainer necessarily in the career, but an entertainer that your Sims can hire. So you know when you go to like lounges or bars or something in the game and there's a microphone or there's a piano and you can click on it and you can hire someone to come and play the piano and whatnot. I imagine Ian is the kind of Sims that you know, you can hire him if you want to for the evening and he'll come and he'll play the piano in his little suit, and I just think it's the most adorable thing. I was actually thinking back to a few years back. I was in a shopping centre in London and there was a piano on the top floor, and I remember just standing there and this little old gentleman came in his suit and tie and just started playing the piano, and it was the most adorable thing. But I imagine that that's the kind of Sim that Ian is. I imagine that he loves doing everything musically inclined. Maybe I might make it so he's got a few skills in both the guitar and the violin. There is actually a piano that I included in this house, but it's not the grand piano, it's the keyboard, which I made to look like an older piano, because we have 2 different pianos that we have in the game. We have the grand piano, which is from base game, and then we have the keyboard, which is from City Living. The keyboard itself is a little bit too modern for this family, so I've merged in a load of different objects and I basically created a new piano, which by the way is usable. I'll mention this now before I forget, but as always, the house has been play tested, didn't run into any problems, everything works absolutely fine. But I basically made this little keyboard piano thing in the office room, and I was thinking maybe of an evening you have Derek in the office writing these children books and maybe Ian's on the other side just playing some tunes on the piano. Maybe he's practicing for his next gig or something. I just love that idea, and I was thinking that's maybe how the Sims met. Maybe one evening Derek was at his office job, he went for a few drinks after work, that kind of thing, and maybe he saw Ian, got chatting to him, and then after a small amount of time they just fell in love and they became married and whatnot. That's how I imagine that they met. I imagine that Ian one particular day was maybe playing at a bar or something and Derek was at this bar, they met each other, they fell in love, and now they live in this cottage in Henford-on-Bagley. I just love this idea so much, and I'm so excited to kind of give them more depth to the storyline, you know, create the different members of the family, create the grandchildren, create all the different friends that they're going to have, and expand on their skills a little bit. I'm just so excited, and I love this backstory, so I hope you guys like it as well. But anyway, moving from that and actually talking about what I'm doing right now. So as you can see, I've done quite the majority of the landscaping. I've also done the majority of the back garden, and I'm basically just going around now and just adding in some more details. As you would have seen, I did just quickly do the garden, which has the chicken coops in. It also has some gardening plots, but off camera when I actually came in and I was taking the screenshots, which by the way, the screenshots are so pretty. I had so much fun taking the screenshots, but I decided to add in one of the little bunny holes where bunnies can come out of, as well as one of the tree stumps that birds can fly out of. Now you see on the left hand side where I've got that mushroom and kind of like a cart, I placed down the bird tree there. I didn't place it down so it was going to be usable. It was just kind of so in this house there is some birds flying around and there's all these different sparrows and it just looks really pretty. So I added the little bird tree in between that cart and the mushroom. If you wanted to, you could just replace it to somewhere where it's usable, because your Sims can actually interact with birds. But I just really like the idea of birds just flying around the garden. And then also you can see over here where I'm placing down some gardening tools. In this little corner I changed up a little bit and I added in the bunny hut as well. So now in this garden you have little bunny rabbits just bouncing around, going through all the crops, and it's just so adorable. I don't know why when I was initially building this I forgot to add in the bunny hut and then the bird hut thing, but if you want to download this build, then they are actually included and you'll see them in the screenshots as well. Something as well that I did off camera was I actually placed down some gardening plots of actual like vegetables. Why did I forget the word vegetables then? But I placed down some vegetables onto them garden plots. So I spent so long, and I actually spent an embarrassing amount of time trying to get the vegetables to a good life stage, so they was like fully grown, you know, your Sims could go and pick them and, you know, use them in the kitchen for dinner. It took me so long. So in the end I actually went into my own personal household that I play with off camera, because, you know, I don't share any of my gameplay, which is something actually that I really want to do once, like one day I want to start sharing my gameplay, and I'd love to have a let's play, but I'm not sure if enough people would like me to do a let's play or not, so let me know if you ever do. But besides the point, I went onto my personal household, my legacy family, and luckily enough they're farmers, so they've got a bunch of crops, and so I basically copied over their crops, put them into a room and moved them onto this lot. So the garden now consists of 2 sets of lettuce, 2 sets of mushroom, and then 1 set of pumpkin. And funnily enough, and I promise I didn't do it on purpose, but there's 5 different types of oversized crops that we have in the game, and I just so happened to put down 5 different garden plots. So if you wanted to, you could have 1 of each oversized crop growing in the garden, but I decided to keep it just so it's lettuce, mushroom and pumpkin. But it goes without saying, if you want to download the house and you want to change that, maybe you do want 1 of each, or maybe you want to grow some flowers instead, honestly feel free to. I just wanted to give you some crops because the oversized crops in the game take forever and a day to grow, and so I wanted you to have an option. So if you wanted to download and get straight into gameplay with gardening and whatnot, you've got some options there available to you. But anyway, moving on from that, as you can see, I've now moved on into the inside of this house, and I'm currently going around and furnishing the kitchen. So as you would have seen, I've quickly done the front hallway entrance into the house. In there we've got a coat rack, we've got an umbrella rack, we've got the thermostat for the house to control the central heating, which, because Henford-on-Bagley is based off England, you're going to need it, especially right now. I woke up this morning and there was frost on the grass. It's getting really cold in the UK, plus the sun sets are like 4 o'clock now, so by the time this video has gone up, it's going to be like pitch black outside. But besides the point, I wanted there to be a thermostat in this house because, you know, if it's based in England, you're going to need it. And then now, as you can see, I've now moved on into the kitchen. I love this kitchen so much for 2 reasons. I used a wall tile, which I don't think I've ever used before. It's the cream one, which comes from base game. And secondly, I decided to make the kitchen into the dining room as well, which I never seem to do. I never seem to do the kitchen and the dining room in the same space. I always seem to make a separate space for the dining room. But this dining room table just being in the middle of the kitchen just makes it feel so cozy, and just I just want to sit down and have a cup of tea with this couple. Like it just makes me feel so warm, and it just feels so homey, and I just love this kitchen so much. As you can see, I went for the table, which is from Cats and Dogs, and then the matching chairs, which are also from Cats and Dogs. And then in the kitchen, for the counters, I decided to go for the ones that we got from, I believe, the Cottage Living expansion pack, and then the fridge is also from Cottage Living, and then I think the oven is as well. I think it's just mainly cottage living in this kitchen, but it's just so homey and cozy. And, you know, you just want to have a homemade meal in here. I can imagine them making like Yorkshire puddings or something and just sitting down at the table when their grandchildren come to stay. I just really like this kitchen. I just think it's just so welcoming and cozy. But you can see I'm just going around it now and finishing it up, adding some curtains and whatnot, just adding the final decorations. I also went ahead and placed down some recipe books on top of the fridge, which I imagine that maybe Derek was trying out a new recipe, or maybe they were trying to bake something, and possibly them cookbooks are a Winterfest present that Ian bought him one year or something, and he was just trying something out, and so he just kind of read them and then placed them on top of the fridge and hadn't put them away. I love doing little realistic pieces of clutter like that, just because it makes it feel a little bit more realistic, and, you know, it's a lived-in house and I wanted this house to feel like that. But anyway, moving on from that, as you can see, I've now moved on into the lounge room. So in the lounge room, I wanted to decorate it quite older like, so I wanted it to look like it was a lounge room for two elders, as both of them are in the elder life stage. So in here I went for the cats and dogs 3-seater sofa and then the matching armchairs to go alongside it. I love using these armchairs for like grandparents' bedrooms or for an elder's cottage or an elder's house, because they feel like they belong to an elder couple. But I was kind of imagining Up. If anyone's familiar with the Disney film Up, you might be familiar with the scenario of Carl and his wife, who sadly passed away. Honestly, it makes me sob just thinking about it. But I was thinking back to how in his living room or his lounge room he had two armchairs. I was thinking that Carl and Derek both sit on these armchairs, and then maybe when they have friends come round, they sit on the sofa. I feel like they don't regularly sit on the sofa. Maybe they just sit on the armchairs and read books together, or maybe do some cross stitching or something like that. But as you can see, I'm just cluttering up the fireplace now. Now, something that I do to actually clutter up the fireplace is I delete the wall behind it, and then once I've deleted the wall, I'm actually able to move some paintings on top of the fireplace. I did a very similar thing in a lot of the fireplaces in my last build when I rebuilt the Magic Realm in the Sims 4 Magic Realm world. I don't know what to refer to it as, but if you're familiar with that, I basically did this a bunch in that video, and I wanted to do that idea in this video as well, to make it look like maybe they're antiques. It's things that they've collected over the years and they're now placed on top of the fireplace alongside with some paintings. I also used one of the old TVs that is from Debug. That TV is a still usable TV, but I don't feel like the couple watch it often. I feel like it's a TV for when their grandchildren come round, and so I didn't feel like where they're old, they're not going to have the latest Samsung TV, do you know what I mean? They're going to have like an old piece of technology, and it's the only thing they do. They often probably never turn it on, but I wanted to include one just for gameplay purposes and if your Sims need to get their fun up quickly, and so I decided to use that one, which is from the Eco Lifestyle debug menu. But anyway, now moving on, I've now moved on into the next room, which is the home office. So in here, I wanted there to be a space that Derek could go onto the computer and, you know, write the children books, maybe do some research on some cooking recipes, or maybe do some research on the best type of way to grow your crops or something to do with gardening. I wanted there to be an office space, but then I also wanted there to be a space in this room that Ian can come in and, you know, play the piano. And so what I did is I actually used the City Living keyboard and merged it in between two side tables, which are from cats and dogs. I placed one onto the floor and then I moved objects one on top of it, and it looks like a little piano, and then I'm just going around and cluttering up the top of it. Now, up until this point, I completely forgot to mention that I do also imagine that this couple have two cats, and so I placed down a little cat tree in the corner. I never use that object because it's so difficult to place down into a lot of homes, but I was able to find a nice spot for it in this house, and so this is where the cats can come and scratch and whatnot. I was also a bit worried that it might not work because you got the keyboard directly next to it, but I play tested this house, like I've mentioned a few times, and I also play tested it with a cat, and I waited forever. The cat took its time, but the cat finally actually went onto the little cat tree, and it works. They can go onto the top portion as well, so it's a completely usable object, and I was really happy about that. But in here as well, there is a little cross stitching thing because Derek has some skills in the cross stitching, and maybe possibly it's something that he wants Ian to pick up, and maybe it's something that they can eventually do together, because they have got quite different skills, but their differences kind of make them a couple, and they still love each other, but maybe they're trying to find a familiar ground and something that they both enjoy doing, and maybe one day that is going to be cross stitching. But Now moving on, I've moved on into the next room. By the way, if you want to change the office into a dining room or something, you can definitely do that. I was thinking as well, when they got the house, because I believe the house is meant to be Derek's family home, what he grew up in. I imagine that when he was growing up, the room that is now the office was possibly the dining room, and obviously since then that they wanted to make it into a space that they could both just do a ton of different activities in, and so they converted the dining room into like a home office thing. If you wanted to, you could change it back into a dining room. If you wanted to as well, you can change it into another bedroom. Honestly, you can do whatever you like, but as you can see, I quickly did one of the bathrooms. Normally I don't show the furnishing for both bathrooms, but the downstairs bathroom is only a half bathroom because it's got a toilet and a sink, but then it's also got the washing machine and the tumble dryer in it as well. Now I tried to, off camera when I was taking the screenshots, place down the hanging line so your Sims can hang out their laundry. I couldn't find a placement that I felt suited it correctly, and so I decided not to add one into this house. But if you want to, and you want your Sims to be able to hang out all of their laundry into the sunshine, you can definitely place one down into the garden. I just couldn't find a placement for it that I felt went nicely. But now moving on to the upstairs portion of this house, I've started off by furnishing the second bathroom. So in here, it's quite a oddly shaped bathroom, but I love it. I feel like it just gives it a little bit of character. I really wanted there to be a sink area which was kind of enclosed by two walls either side, so I built a platform and then put a wall around it. Annoyingly, it deleted the chimney on the left hand side because you can see that I've actually placed the chimney down. And another thing that I want to mention, you might be thinking, why didn't you just put a wall down instead of putting two chimneys to make it look like a wall? Well, if I was to put a wall, I couldn't put the roof decorations all the way up to the edge of the roof, and it just looked a bit odd because I had all these roof pieces along the edge of the roof trim, and then all of a sudden when it got to the chimney there was none. And so to do that, I kind of found a workaround. I actually used a chimney and then merged both of them in together to make it look like it's the wall, and then that way I could put a roof piece underneath it. Hopefully that makes sense. It just goes a lot better and it's just a lot easier on the eye. But anyway, now moving on, I've now moved on into the grandchildren's room. So this is the room that I imagine that is not that often used, maybe around about Winterfest time or maybe on the summer holidays. Their grandchildren come to stay maybe for like a week or two, maybe even just for a few days. But I wanted there to be a space for if you do decide to invite the grandchildren over, they've got somewhere to sleep. Now I was thinking that they're going to be children, but honestly they could probably be teenagers, and where the room is not that well up to date because it's not really a lived in room, it's just kind of like a guest room, maybe the decorations need to be updated, maybe they need to give it a fresh coat of paint, or maybe change up the decorations because they're decorated to be for children, but they don't have to be for children. If you wanted to, it just could become a guest bedroom and you could replace the two single beds with a double bed if you want to. But now moving on into the next bedroom in this house, this is the bedroom for both Derek and Ian. So in here I went for the Cottage Living double bed, and then the bedside table is from Discover University, I think. I always get Discover University bedside table mixed up with the one from Cats and Dogs because to me they look quite similar, but I'm pretty sure it's from Discover University. But in here I decided to go for a bit of a blue theme, so you can get that from the bedspread that I've used, like the duvet cover of the bed. I also placed down a painting opposite the bed which is from Cats and Dogs. It's kind of like a sailory looking one, and there is also that little blue armchair in the corner which is from the Cottage Living expansion pack. But in here I just cluttered it up with a bookcase, a little mirror, the get together wardrobe, and then I think that's basically it. Oh, I added in a cat bed as well, one of the cat beds, because in a second you're going to see me shortly move on into the hallway where I'll place down another cat bed, because I imagine there is two cats in this household instead of one, or maybe there is just one and they've just got multiple sleeping arrangements. I don't know about anyone else, if anyone has got a dog or a cat, but my dog has 3 different beds in the house, so maybe it's one cat and they're just very lucky and they've got multiple sleeping locations. But anyway guys, I am actually going to end this voice over here. As always, you can download this build via the gallery. My origin ID is JessicapieYT, or you can just search for the hashtag JessicapieYT or just the hashtag Jessicapie. As always, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and as always, if you do like my content, then please do subscribe, and hopefully I will see you in my next Sims 4 speedbuilding video. Bye guys!